All right, so today we're going to be talking about a transition from residential to commercial property. So before we start, let's get out of the way that commercial properties are going to be a bit more pricey. They are going to require about a 30 to 40% down payment. I think it's 30% though, but don't quote me on that. Around that of a down payment, it's a bit more of a hefty down payment, but it actually may be easier to get financing just because it's secured by the asset itself, so the bank sees it as less of a risky investment, which is actually pretty interesting. I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't know that. So before we get in, you know what I mean, one of the first things that you should remember, this is a priority. You cannot change your core fundamentals of evaluating a property just because you're switching a property type. Just because you're going to commercial to residential does not mean you should evaluate the property any differently. It is still a property. You're still going to do property diligence. You're still going to do proper research, and you still want to research your submarket thoroughly. If you can't just throw all your, you know what I mean, your procedures out the window just because it's a residential versus commercial. At the end of the day, it is still an investment. You should treat it like any other investment, and that's how you become a successful investor. You don't skip around things. You know, you don't just go, you know, say you've been evaluating residential properties for a while. You know, I mean, you have a few residential investments. You don't just throw all your due diligence and stuff out the window when you're going to commercial. Like, oh, it's just an office building. You know, no, you evaluate it like every other investment that you've had. You don't switch anything up. No need to get too fancy and complicated over here. You're going from residential to commercial. It's still a property, so still evaluate it the same way with property diligence. So one thing to keep in mind is that there's some complications that may arise with commercial real estate. So let's go for an office building, for example. So with a residential building, your tenants are just individuals or families, for example. With an office building, your tenants are companies, small companies, big companies. You know, it all depends on the size of your building as well. How many companies? There's companies that are going to be occupying this building. So keep in mind that use common sense to identify situations that just aren't ideal. So, for example, having two competitors in the same building. No, you do not want to. That would be ridiculous because then one of them is going to leave there for a loss of cash flow. Another thing to look out for is if let's say you have an office building and 80% of your space is occupied by one company. That is not ideal at all. The reason is they leave, you're kind of screwed, because you only got 20% of the cash flow coming in. Therefore, you don't want to throw all your eggs in one basket, you know what I'm saying, with one company, for example. It's the best way I can describe that. So, like I said, you do not want to switch up the way you evaluate or, you know what I mean, properly operate your property. At the end of the day, it's still investment. You should treat it the same. But like I said, there's a few more complications that arise with commercial real estate, such as the office buildings, such as the examples with, you know, I mean, one company taking up too much space, for example. So another thing to keep in mind is take the same values of renovating, decreasing operating expenses, and increasing occupancy. Apply that to your commercial property still. That is never changed. Those are the three core values. If I could summarize how to be good at, how to be successful in real estate, that would be the three tips I give right there. So always apply this. For example, they may differentiate though, because like with a residential, maybe in renovating, you know what I mean, includes putting new floors in or painting. But with an office building, maybe you can look for other rooms of improvement. For example, such as a conference room. You can maybe, if you notice that like there's no conference room in an office building, that's a huge thing you could add. You could set aside an area for a conference room for, you know what I mean, rent, for example, and have a list where companies and occupants of the building can sign up and have meetings in there, for example. Just look for other areas to improve your property, because there always is something to find, and that will differentiate with your property type. So next, let's talk about retail real estate. Yeah, that's the word I was trying to find. But one of the things that you're just going to treat this the same way as any other commercial property. So think about it this way: with retail real estate, you know what I mean, retail properties, your tenants are stores. You know, for example, you own a strip. Let's say you own a strip, and then you got like a Starbucks or whatever, Panera, I don't know, you know what I mean? They're renting, they're your tenants, for example. One thing that I would keep in mind with going in the retail in the future though is one of the issues is that a lot of sales are going online. I mean, I'd say on average it's increasing by like 1% a year on how many online sales are, you know what I mean, how much sales are online. So make sure when you go in the real retail, just think of the long run situation, whether you think your store is going to be successful with the growing online market, because unfortunately, I mean, obviously there's always going to be a market for retail. You know what I mean? People are always going to be still buying stuff in person. There's some stuff that you just can't buy online, you know what I mean? But the issue is, think about your like what type of stores are in there and whether they may suffer from online. For example, I've seen malls that just completely are abandoned. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, they're not abandoned, but like you'll see like a few people walking in. You know what I mean? You see many stores empty, and then you have to wonder why. Why is this mall not occupied? Maybe it's a large portion. People don't feel like leaving their house because they can just purchase items online. So just keep that in mind. So like I said, any property you get, just utilize your mindset with the type of property it is and what you would like in an office building, what you would like in a retail center, for example, that you don't think is being utilized. So at the end of the day, don't change your fundamentals. We're still going to be increasing occupancy, decreasing operating expenses, and renovating. We're still going to be doing those three things no matter what. And just make sure you look for a property that's not, the potential's not being utilized, and proper due diligence, proper research, and you're good to go. Just be careful, you know what I mean? Obviously the asset protection too, but make sure, I pretty much assume that you're always going to protect the commercial property just like any other property. You don't want to, you know what I mean, mess yourself up and end up catching a lawsuit or anything just because lack of asset protection. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Sorry this video is a bit choppy. This is only like my fourth take or whatever, but looking forward to making more videos. So thank you so much. Please like and subscribe.